Hello, everyone. We are so excited for today's episode in which we discuss the Phantom Menace from a hero's journey perspective. And I guess Brian and I, we wanted to clear the air, and there's been rumors that we are going to plagiarize the Hero's Journey podcast, and we wanted to tell you yes, we fully intend to copy and plagiarize them. So
That's right. Yeah, we were lucky enough to have Dan and Jeff on the podcast to go through the hero's journey treatment of Knights of the Old Republic. And yeah, this is something we've wanted to do for a little while now, Cassie, is to go through kind of each of the films individually and then together as the whole trilogy. So today we're going to be starting at the beginning with the Phantom Menace.
yeah, I mean, the beginning is a perfectly good place to start. I kind of butchered. I was going to quote The Sound of Music, but I'm like, I don't know The Sound of Music enough off the top of my head. So
The
someone in
hills
the
are alive
comments,
with the Phantom Menace, I think is the quote.
so someone can be a Sound of Music super fan and correct me. Yeah, did you have any cool background on the film, like any like insights into the box office records or
Yeah, for sure. So the Phantom Menace released on May the 19th in 1999, written and directed by George Lucas, of course, as we all know. And it was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, but it lost all 3. It was nominated for Best Sound, Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Special Effects. Question, Cassia, do you know who won those 3 awards?
I think it was The Matrix, wasn't it?
That is correct. Yeah, The Matrix, another movie franchise that we both enjoy and have talked about here on the podcast and over on the Patreon as well before. But yeah, lost all 3 to The Matrix there. So, but I don't know, was that just or not? I mean, The Matrix was pretty groundbreaking cinematically, but going back and rewatching The Phantom Menace, I was reminded just how good and how good it sounded, how good it looked, all those things. So definitely warranted those nominations there. And this movie was fast tracking, through the box office. It was a big, I remember back in 1999, it was a big push and a big kind of question on everyone's mind who was watching the box office results of whether the Phantom Menace was going to catch Titanic. It never did, but it did end up making over $1 billion worldwide. And now it sits at 46th all time on the worldwide box office charts. There are 4 Star Wars films ahead of it. That is episodes 7, 8, and 9, and Rogue One have all made more money than the Phantom Menace. But the Phantom Menace really kind of, blew the other Star Wars films out of the water when it came back. I remember just how big and epic it was. Cassia, you remember, yeah, we've talked about it on the podcast a couple of times. Just it's hard to even describe the Phantom Menace like fever in the world.
For that summer, we would go on family trips and like we would buy like some potato chips or soda, and like go to some of the fast food chains and like everything was the Phantom Menace. Like I want some archaeologist 1,000 years in the future to stumble upon this and like be like, did they worship the Phantom Menace? I'm confused. There's so much of this merchandise. It took over the world. Even if it didn't beat Titanic, like it did pretty well for itself.
It did pretty well for itself, absolutely. And then there was also a 3D re-release of the Phantom Menace in 2012. I
I
think they
saw that.
were I think they were originally planning to do kind of all of the films in 3D, but that was right around the time that the Disney Lucasfilm deal started to happen. So that was the only one that got a theatrical release. You did see it. I was wondering if you had a chance to make it out to see that.
Yeah, and during that time, a little bit before that time, the prequels were kind of besmirched all the time, but kind of rewatching it like about 13 years later, I was like, this isn't actually that bad of a film. Jar Jar's not that annoying, and the pod race slaps. The Duel of the Fates, still probably one of the best lightsaber duels, and maybe one of like the best cinematic duels in, movie history.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great duel. The Duel of the Fates is a fantastic song. I think it was John Williams was definitely snubbed, I think, in terms of his not getting nominated for Best Score because the Phantom Menace soundtrack was amazing. I remember listening to it back in high school. I was in like a music theory class, so we would listen to different music and stuff, and that one played through the auditorium quite a bit around that time when I was in high school. And yeah, I just remember going to see this film and going out after school, kind of every day to going to Taco Bell and KFC and all those places to try to collect all the toys and go into the store. And like you said, it was Phantom Menace on everything. It was unbelievable and pretty wild time, and excited to be going through and giving it the hero's journey kind of treatment on this film.
Yeah. And kind of looking forward to some other um episodes we're going to be doing. We're going to be discussing the Star Wars heresies, interpreting the themes, symbols, and philosophies of episodes one, two, and three by Paul F. McDonald, kind of to supplement what we do with the hero's journey look into the prequels trilogy. And if anyone knows how to get a hold of the author, we'd love to have him on the podcast. So, or, like if he wants to.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if anyone knows how to get in touch with him, that would be great. Or if anyone knows any kind of comparable titles to the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, definitely let us know those down in the comments too, because as we go through all nine of these anthology films, that we would like to dig into those kind of in the same manner as well. So
Yeah. And before we deep dive into the hero's journey of the Phantom Menace, we are called the Old Republic podcast, and we talk a whole bunch about KOTOR. So I think maybe we can do a too long didn't listen. Like, how does KOTOR relate to the Phantom Menace? What were some of the things you thought of?
yeah, you put this on the outline, and I was thinking, and I couldn't really think of anything like crazy or like monumental of things that happen in the movies. I mean, we see, kind of Coruscant and the Jedi Temple there, which maybe leads to that some ties that bind a little bit. But yeah, I really couldn't think of anything, within the stories too much. Maybe I'm completely overlooking anything, but I think the big takeaway for me was how they link together. Was you definitely see some of the same kind of thoughts and character design development and things in Knights of the Old Republic, because this came out in 1991. Knights of the Old Republic came out in 2003, so definitely it was going to be pulling kind of from both this and Attack of the Clones, kind of the films that were coming around that same time, to give kind of the archetypes for our characters. But I don't know, was there anything more specific that I missed, or was I completely just drawing a blank here on my Phantom Menace and KOTOR ties?
Well, I think KOTOR is at its heart like kind of like a love letter to the original trilogy that the production team grew up with, but kind of at the kind of in the behind the scenes, like the Phantom Menace was the last Star Wars film that came out during its production cycle. And as we get into Attack of the Clones, there were some story decisions that were altered to not be as similar to Attack of the Clones. But what I kind of think, like, even though it's like KOTOR feels like an original trilogy-esque story, you can kind of see like some of the inspirations or outright like plagiarism. Well,
Hmm.
not plagiarism, but just heavily inspired, like in KOTOR by the original trilogy. KOTOR seems like it has an original trilogy story, but it's taking place in a prequel trilogy universe, like kind of like with the technology and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like you're traversing many more worlds rather than just like a couple of them, and it's kind of fleshed out. You have the Republic, and it's like I guess it's 4,000 years before everything, but it's kind of like in its prime, even though it's at war. So you kind of get to see the Jedi. Like it's not just a couple Jedi, couple Sith. You get to see a whole bunch of Jedi fight a whole bunch of Sith. So that's kind of interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, and definitely there's some parallels too then with the way they kind of portray the Jedi Council in the game is, something kind of similar that we see in the Phantom Menace, and kind of the different personalities and the I don't know, the way that they're behaving and are portrayed in the game, I think is pretty similar. You have a character like Joey Bindo, who at least in my eyes, I think is modeled pretty closely after kind of the thoughts and ideals of Qui-Gon Jinn. So I think that there were a lot of inspirations from people who are working on the game. Obviously, they had the original trilogy and, kind of the supplemental, what we think of now as like Legends material. But then once this movie came out, got everyone back into the brain of Star Wars and what George Lucas was thinking about what Star Wars was. So I think that it probably, led to some creative decisions and design decisions and things like that.
Oh yeah, and I forgot about Nicole. His dynamic with the exile kind of reminds me of Anakin and Padme. So
That's right.
yeah,
McCall also hates sand. It gets everywhere. But we're gonna have to wait for that. That's not today, Cassia. That we're Phantom Menace. No Attack of the Clones today.
we are back. We are back here at the Phantom Menace. So, uh, the Phantom Menace, we open with a title crawl, and it kind of gets right down to it. Like taxation controversies are kind of impacting the Republic. This world, Naboo, is kind of like being blockaded by the Trade Federation, you know. And some people say, like, oh, taxation, when has that ever been an issue? And I'm like, well, looking at the history of the world, like, kind of a lot, and like
Mm-hmm.
it literally gave us the USA. So, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, taxation gets us right on the hook here for the story, what we're going to be talking about in this Star Wars tale. And yeah, we see our Jedi there that are on to do some trade negotiations, and it all goes awry. And that's what gets our story started.
Yeah, so the ordinary world, I kind of saw like the ordinary world, like kind of described in the title crawl. Like it's not a galaxy at war, but it's just kind of like little like trade, taxation, negotiations. Some Jedi Knights are sent by the Chancellor for some busy work. It's not like save the galaxy, it's just like deal with this. And we get to see two Jedi, Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi, kind of handle or, not handle the Trade Federation.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So step one here, the ordinary world. Now, I don't know if we should address this right off the top, Cassia, because I'm interested because you and I have not compared notes on this.
We
Um,
have not.
so I am uh, going through my hero's journey timeline with Qui-Gon actually as the hero of the Phantom Menace.
Well, guess what? So did I.
Perfect. See, I knew we were going to be on the same page here, hopefully. So now it's just going to be a matter of figuring out how well kind of our sections of the hero's journey lines up. And yeah, for the ordinary world, I think that that's kind of, here this whole first section, really, starting with the title crawl, obviously, and then kind of through the trade negotiations, they go bad. They end up making it down to Naboo and getting the Queen Amidala and crew off planet and on their way to Coruscant. And I think that whole kind of first section of the film is the ordinary world for Qui-Gon Jinn. I don't think that anything of this is out of the norm for our Jedi Master.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like this is kind of like Act One. You kind of think maybe Qui-Gon thinks it's going to go a certain way, but it kind of goes another. And we kind of just like, like we get a look at the first movie of the prequel trilogy, and like you said, the CGI holds up for 1999, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of liked it was pushing the edge forward while looking different from the original trilogy's look. Like with the original trilogy, we had a used and mass-produced technology, and it looked very kind of old. A lot of it was falling apart, but with the prequel trilogy, you have a galaxy that is free. So you kind of have like more of a crafterly artisan look to the tech, like kind of evoking the 1920s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything is much more, it's not as harsh of, straight lines. Everything is more rounded and curved and ornate and definitely in Naboo and the underwater and Otogunga and Gungan City. Everything is colorful and vibrant and really kind of thriving in this you know time, I guess, of peace or near peace, right as we're getting into kind of this conflict with the Trade Federation. So yeah, aesthetically it looked very different, but yeah, on the rewatch, this movie, it looks fantastic, being whatever, 24 years old now at this point. So yeah, it really kind of pushed the envelope with what could be done and how the story was going to look and play out, and we kind of see the way that those colors and lines transition throughout the prequel trilogy, which we'll kind of talk about later when we're covering the whole of the prequel trilogy and once. But yeah, definitely in this first installment here, going back to Star Wars, it definitely had a different look and feel from the original trilogy.
Yeah. And some people like maybe couldn't get past that and like, you know what, like it's subjective, it's everyone's opinion. I guess I grew up with it and I'm like, this is awesome. So yeah. But anyways, kind of getting back to the Trade Federation, kind of the negotiations kind of go south. They don't really happen at all. And you kind of see the Trade Federation try to kill them with like Dioxys and droids and droikitas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So then like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are like, okay, we need to separate and we need to stow away to Naboo because um we need to help Queen Amidala off planet, or kind of see what's going on there. So I kind of saw the call to adventure as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan helping Queen Amidala off planet after the failed negotiations.
Okay. I actually have the call to adventure a little late. I kind of see that whole section with the trade negotiations, getting to Naboo, meeting Jar Jar, going there, because throughout the section I kind of see Qui-Gon as just being this master to Obi-Wan's Padawan status. So like I said, none of this seems out of the norm for him. It's just kind of a more teaching and learning sort of scenarios for Qui-Gon to be put in here as the master of the master student relationship that we have here. So I actually have the call to adventure, which is the initiating incident of the story, as the hyperdrive failing on Queen Amidala's ship and forcing everyone to make this detour to Tatooine.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. So you kind of mentioned Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's kind of like you kind of see that Master Padawan uh uh kind of dynamic. You see them land on Naboo and um we meet Jar Jar because Qui-Gon saves Jar Jar, and I just want to say that Jar Jar and Ahmed Best deserve the world. Like
Yeah.
and I kind of saw him as like the prequel trilogy's Chewie. He's kind of the opposite of Chewie, like where Chewie just kind of like would like go like "Rah!" Like that was the best Chewie impression I think the
Pretty
world
good.
has
Pretty
ever
good.
seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jar Jar speaks galactic basic kind of like a little bit differently, kind of like Yoda, like uh Jar Jar speaks a little bit more pigeon basic, and he's kind of more reptilian, kind of like a dinosaur,
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that Jar Jar is great. Especially kids who were watching the film, definitely could identify him and see the fun in him. But I never really understood why people didn't like him so much, because I mean, even rewatching it now, all these years later, he didn't feel like he was like overly inserted to things. I don't know, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think that the character modeling, um, of Jar Jar Binks and the work that Ahmed Best did never got the due that it was deserved. I mean, obviously, everyone then went on to talk about Andy Serkis, performance as Gollum as being this groundbreaking thing, but really, it started in 1999 with this character and how amazing it looked and how seamless it looked. And I know that there have been some kind of retooling and updates to the film, but yeah, I mean, it's really hard to make a case against how good it looked.
Yeah. And I it's been nice to see Ahmed Best kind of in the Mandalorian and everything. And I wish that, like he got more of a due. Maybe he could be in an Andy Serkis thing in the future. But we kind of see Jar Jar say like, "Oh, we can go to where all the Gungans live." What is that called again?
Otogunga.
Otagunga. I was gonna guess that, but I'm like, what if I get it wrong? And after getting like the Sound of Music thing wrong, like I'm like, I
Mm.
can't fail
Yeah.
again. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it is a hidden city. And it's really neat. It's a neat design, and um, it's kind of this very much a counter counterpoint, I guess, to the people of Naboo living up in Theed and these royal palaces and stuff. But it's still very ornate, and the round shapes and stuff like that. So very kind of symbiotic relationship on one hand, but a very separate culturally. Obviously, one being completely submerged beneath the water is kind of this physical barrier between the two civilizations.
yeah, I kind of wish there would have been more done with the symbiosis between the human Nubians, and the Gungans kind of living below. We see a little bit of it like at the end, but yeah, Otagunga is so interesting, and Jar Jar was banished for being clumsy, but the leader, who is portrayed by Brian Blessed, you're supposed to say it in all caps, but he gives them a ride to go through the planet core. And what I was thinking is, does that mean that their planet core is hollow?
Mm. Yeah, could be. I suppose there's nothing that says that the middle of your planet has to be full of molten lava like ours is, I guess. But yeah, I guess it must be some sort of hollow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if our world was hollow, like maybe that could like push travel, forward, but
Mm.
it was just a thought I had rewatching it. So, yeah. Um we kind of resurface, after some fish and bigger fish situations down there. Uh and we surface into the capital of Naboo, Theed, and Naboo kind of looks like Italy plus India, and it's so beautiful. Like I'd love to see more of Naboo like in live action in the future.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of Italy, and I think some of it was filmed also in Spain, in Madrid, Spain as well. So I mean, there are some places you can go to and see there if you ever have the chance. And yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. I hope we get to go back there and spend some time there and future projects for sure. Um, but yeah, so you have your call to adventure as them getting the queen off planet.
Yeah. So we meet Padme, who we think is Queen Amidala, and her handmaidens. That's kind of a twist that like it took me a few years. Like I saw this as a kid, like it went over my head. Like Keira Knightley portrays Sabe. Is it Sabe or Sabe?
Sabe, I believe, but all good
Oh,
Star Wars names can be pronounced lots of ways.
many ways, like so Padme and Sabe, like it's kind of like the Hidden Fortress twist, like the queen is in disguise, and like Keira Knightley and I was gonna say Padme, but Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman look so similar, like with makeup. Like even as an adult, I'm still like, I think that's Keira Knightley,
Yeah.
so I'm still not sure, anyways. So
Yeah, that's right. Later in the film when they're on Coruscant, I've still, all these years later, I still do not know for sure if it's Natalie Portman or Keira Knightley dressed up as the queen going into the Senate, but yeah, could be either for sure.
yeah, yeah, I think like Padme in that situation would be like, yeah, I don't care, like Sabe, you handle that, but um, but yeah. So what I kind of love about the Phantom Menace is it's so anti-Hollywood. Like I love it. You have many heroes, a la Lord of the Rings. You have Qui-Gon, you have Obi-Wan, you have Padme, you have Jar Jar. Later on, we'll have Anakin, and I think that's all of them. Like R2 is just a side character, right?
R2 is the hero of the story, is who I almost did my hero's journey analysis for R2, but I decided not to. I decided to stick with Qui-Gon. But I think you could definitely classify R2 as a hero because it's very important as the ship is leaving Naboo, takes some damage, and R2 has to go out and save the ship. So definitely not an ancillary character, definitely a hero. Very, very pivotal character in terms of keeping the ship afloat, so to speak, and getting us to our next destination of Tatooine to refuel or to fix the leaking hyperdrive.
Yeah, so I'm just kidding. I love R2 and like I just was kind of just trying to like play a joke and be like R2 doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
That's
know?
that's right. No winding me up about R2. He definitely matters as the hero of the entire saga, is what we're going to get to at the end of this.
Yeah. So uh Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan help Queen Amidala and her crew off planet. And what I kind of saw as the refusal of the call was the blockade from the Trade Federation. Sometimes the refusal comes from without,
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
hero. So those forces are trying to like keep them on Naboo. And I kind of saw like having to land on Tatooine as like the refusal of the call.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so as I mentioned, my call to adventure was the hyperdrive failing, which kind of forced us to Tatooine. So my refusal of the call actually then is once everyone lands and gets into Tatooine, and Qui-Gon is attempting to purchase the parts. He tries to pay with Republic credits. And Watto is not going to take those. So I saw that as potentially the refusal of the call, the
Mhm.
refusal for not being able to pay with the Republic credits. But then also you get a very vocal refusal of the call from Qui-Gon then once they leave the junk shop and Anakin takes them to the Skywalker residence to get out of the sandstorm. Basically, Anakin point blank asks him, have you come to free us? And Qui-Gon just lays out a straight up no, that is not why I'm here. That's me refusing this call to get you out of here. So that was kind of the section there where I saw the refusal of the call for Qui-Gon.
Yeah. And like you say, they all kind of land on Tatooine, like in the outskirts, trying to stay hidden. And Qui-Gon is going to go to town. Jar Jar's coming with him, and then Padme also comes because she's curious about the planet, and she kind of like hides it behind like the Queen is curious. And Qui-Gon's kind of like, okay. Um, do you think that Qui-Gon always knew the truth about Padme and Queen Amidala?
I suspect that he did probably, um, especially from kind of the knowing looks later, there and I even in this front section when you know, I don't even remember the line right now, but she says something about the queen, and Qui-Gon kind of winds her up and is like, "Well, the queen's not here, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge." So I think that Qui-Gon knew pretty much from the start. I think.
Yeah. I think Qui-Gon's the one person that wasn't fooled by it. We kind of see like Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of are like, what? But I
Mm,
kind of suspect that Qui-Gon knew. So,
yeah.
um, what's kind of funny about this story is I see Qui-Gon as both the hero and the mentor. From our talk with Chris Vogler, like sometimes like that's kind of why I like the Phantom Menace is because it kind of plays with the hero's journey. It's not just doing it like a straight shot. Like some characters fill more than one role, like one more than one archetype.
Right. Hmm.
And because like for meeting with the mentor, I put Qui-Gon meets Anakin.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair for sure. So step four here, meeting with the mentor, the hero gains the supplies, knowledge, and confidence needed to commence the adventure. And yeah, you bring up a good point, especially and circling back to our conversation with Christopher Vogler, someone can kind of be in both roles, and especially in something like the Phantom Menace, which was always intended to be part of this trilogy of films, right? So you have the characters kind of switching in and out as we're trying to tell, this 9-hour narrative, and not just this first kind of section of the movie, which is converse to like the original trilogy and A New Hope, which was all very self-contained because it was only intended to be kind of the one film, right? That could carry on, but really it was just telling that one story. But the Phantom Menace really is just serving as 1/3 of the story that George Lucas was trying to tell. So they definitely can go in and out. And I have my meeting with the mentor kind of at the same thing there. So it's the heroes gaining the supplies, knowledge, and confidence to commence the adventures. So yeah, so I have at the Skywalkers. So talking to Shmi, seeing Anakin's kind of aptitude for building C-3PO, fixing the pod racer up, taking the midichlorian account there to find out. So I think that in this section and seeing these things, I think that Qui-Gon's mentor is the Jedi prophecy. I think that is kind of the mentor kind of cornerstone that he's leaning on, and kind of putting those things, the things that he's learning from Shmi, the things that he's seeing from Anakin, and then obviously the midichlorians there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Like you kind of say like Qui-Gon becoming reacquainted with the Jedi prophecy. And we never really kind of learned the details of the prophecy, but um I mean like balance of the force, that seems cool,
Mm-hmm.
but the funny thing about prophecy is like, in Greek mythology, which I'm most familiar with, you see like sometimes when people hear prophecies, like it kind of ruins things for everyone and you try to prevent it, like just read Oedipus Rex, no spoilers, like just see how that works out. But yeah, I think like Anakin is the thing that changes the game because I think it would have been a standard adventure, Jedi adventure, if not for Anakin. I think they
Mm-hmm.
would have found a way off planet eventually. Yeah, we see like Anakin, he has like Jedi reflexes, and we see him building a droid that will be C-3PO, Even though soapbox moment, I think that Anakin should have built R2-D2 because you kind of see more of that relationship like
Mm-hmm.
between Anakin and R2, and then through Luke and R2 throughout all the trilogies. So like I don't know. That's what I think, but that's not
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah, a little aside there. I also agree with that, because then you have to make some sort of story reason why Anakin and R2 were always together and Padme and C-3PO were always together. That they were
Yeah.
wedding gifts, and yeah, maybe it would have made more sense. I don't know for sure. But yeah, I think that's kind of what we're learning there in the meeting with the mentor section there, is he is kind of introduced to Anakin, and sees this kid who he can identify as part of this prophecy. And like I said, kind of that prophecy is what I see as the mentor for Qui-Gon. That one was a little kind of tricky, I guess, to pick out like an exact mentor. um so yeah, I'm throwing it back to the his Jedi training and teachings there.
Yeah, Qui-Gon is kind of like a different kind of Jedi. He's not really in sync with the council, and the older I get, I kind of see like the prequel trilogy Jedi are kind of more about like kind of worrying about Republic politics, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like having power on Coruscant, being in a high tower, and like even though they're aligned with good and trying to do good things, I think they're kind of like lost their focus and misguided. And like Qui-Gon's not on the council, but I think he can see more of the picture.
Yeah, exactly. He has kind of a very wide view of the teachings and the way that he's interpreting that, and that's why I kind of saw it as his teachings. I also kind of see Shmi as a mentor type of a
Yeah.
figure, in the way that she's speaking about Anakin, and kind of his backstory, and the things that he's capable of and how he's different, than other kids and stuff. So I see her kind of as a mentor too. But that's where I kind of left that, and then we're getting into kind of the fun parts of the story here, as we're getting to see young Annie in action, getting the pod racer fixed up and trying to hopefully get the crew off of the planet here, back on track.
Yeah. Some people think the pod race slows the film down, but I'm like, did you watch it? Did you have fun? Like, because it's awesome, it's kind of evoking like if you watch Ben-Hur and this, it's like, oh, I can see that like Lucas was, inspired by Ben-Hur, which would
Mhm.
go on to inspire, like parts of the Book of Boba Fett. I almost said The Mandalorian, but it's the Book of Boba Fett.
That is an easy mistake to make. Yeah, the pod race is amazing. I don't know why people don't like it. It's a visual and audible feast. It's so much fun. Yeah, I love it. That was the whole reason I wanted to go see the Phantom Menace in 3D when I went and saw it. Was I said to myself that the pod race is going to be amazing in 3D, and it was. So
Yeah, and it's kind of like an interesting beginning film. It's not like an origin story like Casino Royale or Batman Begins. Like I said, it's kind of very anti-Hollywood. Like the movie could have started after the failed negotiations with like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan like landing in the spacecraft on Naboo, or like as they escape the blockade, or it even could have like started when they got to Tatooine, but it started where it did. And I think it's kind of like to get you into this like it's not a galaxy at war, like kind of this normal thing. And then like Anakin is kind of the thing that changes, like I said, like changes the game
Mhm.
this movie. And the pod race kind of makes it different. Like that's why I really respect the Phantom Menace is because it's not just like, even though like it echoes the original trilogy, like it's not just like kind of like a carbon copy.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Anakin in this first film is a catalyst. And obviously that's why at least both you and I thought of Qui-Gon as being the hero of this first story. It's not really Anakin's story yet. He is kind of this ember that's going to ignite the rest of this trilogy, but that time has not come yet, and it's important to kind of see how that happened, I guess. Is
Yeah.
more important than, starting the film with young Anakin there.
Yeah. And with the pod race, it's just like a fun race. You can kind of see like I mean, to an extent you see it in an American Graffiti, like uh George Lucas's love of racing. Like he could have been a race car driver if things had gone differently, but I'm surprised that Lucas never did just a movie about racing. But maybe like
Hmm.
the Phantom Menace is the closest thing we get to that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that was the that was the burden of Star Wars that kind of locked you into to telling these stories, and maybe this was his love letter to racing. And yeah, the pod race is super fun. It makes up kind of the next couple steps here of my hero's journey section as we go through. I think it's really important to this journey that Qui-Gon's on as well. So
Yeah. So when Anakin wins the pod race, I have that as crossing the first threshold because then the ship is fixed and Anakin is free. So um the party, is free to go to Coruscant. And like in Anakin's uh case, he literally is free.
Okay. I actually have the pod race broken down here into a couple of sections
Ooh.
for mine. So step number 5 is crossing the first threshold. The hero commits wholeheartedly to the adventure. So I actually have Qui-Gon's crossing the first threshold is him gambling on Anakin and risking the ship. That's him kind of committing to the fact that he wants to get Anakin off planet. He sees him kind of as this chosen one sort of figure. So I think that his first threshold is making that gamble on Anakin and risking the ship. And then step 6, which is tests allies and enemies. The hero explores the special world, faces a trial, and makes friends and enemies. I think that the test is the pod race itself, because it's testing Qui-Gon's faith in, kind of that Jedi prophecy, his faith in Anakin. And then, we're seeing kind of everyone come together. So we see Jar Jar, we see Padme, we see Shmi, we see Qui-Gon, all coming together in that little like pod thing that they're sitting in to watch the race. And we're getting kind of the enemies here of this section of, Watto trying to go back on the wager that they made, and then obviously Sebulba is the enemy here through the pod race.
Oh, so interesting. Now that you say that, it's kind of making me want to change uh my six test allies and enemies answer slightly, but I'm just gonna commit to what I wrote down, you know?
Okay,
Um,
okay, there you go.
yeah. I guess would you say we've made it to the end of Act One?
I would say, yeah. I mean, what a way to end the first act than with a really fun pod race for sure. So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's going to wrap up the first act of our story here.
Okay, and because we are literally copying the format of the Hero's Journey podcast, I guess at the end of Act One, they have a coffee caffeine break. So maybe we can take a break and all get, a soda, and you can get some coffee, and then we can talk about what we've been watching, reading, and playing. How does that sound?
That sounds great because I'm always ready for a coffee.
All right. In the hero's journey, they're in the Vogler Lounge. We could name it something else, or should we just copy them?
I think we should call it Calo Nord's Diner to stay within our KOTOR theme. So,
Okay. Yeah. Cal Leonard's Diner. He probably has a franchise all over the galaxy. I love Cal Leonard.
that's right.
Sarcasm. But yeah, so Brian, what have you been watching, reading, or playing in your downtime?
I wish that the list was longer, and I really wish that the list included playing Jedi Survivor because I still have not done that very much. I've only played about a half hour of it. Been doing a little bit of traveling around, and my wife's been traveling. My parents are in town, so really it's just been a matter of keeping up on some stuff. So I've been reading through some of the Star Wars heresies that we brought up at the beginning of the show. So I'm working my way through that. And then just trying to keep up on some TV shows going on. I've got a lot of really good shows that I'm watching right now. So, Succession, Yellow Jackets, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and Love and Death have all got going on right now. So, luckily for me, Mandalorian ended just in time for these other things to start, so I could keep caught up here on some TV watching and just doing the movies. I'm getting ready to watch Lawrence of Arabia tonight for the Drink the Movies, so
Oh,
I'll be doing that to cover, and
I'm so
that should be good.
excited.
I haven't seen that in a long time, so I'm not looking forward to the 3.5 hours if I'm being completely honest, but that's okay. I've got my coffee here, so I think I'll be able to get through it. So, what about you, Cassie? What have you been doing? Doing a lot of reading, I would guess, a little bit of movie watching, but what have you been getting into?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be taking up drawing again. I
Oh,
did
cool.
some drawing in high school, and I'm gonna restart that. So that's a fun kind of hobby to reignite. I've been reading Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. I finished that. It's by Mason Curie, and now I am reading the follow-up, which is called Daily Rituals Women at Work. So the
Oh,
first
cool.
book kind of like didn't include as many uh female artists. So then in the second book, kind of as a corrective, he decided to just like focus on women because sometimes like women have to like women who are creatives have to like negotiate like marriages, children, misogyny, a lot of other things. So
Hmm.
it's just kind of interesting to kind of get that mirror, like in daily rituals, like got me curious about like kind of creating a schedule that works for me, like because post corona, like uh it kind of like blew up my schedule, and I'm like, I want to have a schedule again. So it got me
Yeah.
thinking about that. And then I haven't really been playing anything, but I've heard the new Zelda game is
Mm.
good. and Jedi Survivor is excellent from what I've heard. And I'm about to wrap up my James Bond watch. Just have Spectre and No Time to Die to watch. And after James Bond watch is over, uh, I'll kind of rewatch the Indiana Jones films leading up to Dial of Destiny, which comes out in June 23rd, I believe. Or is it the 30th? No, it's June 30th. Um, and kind of before I rewatched the Indiana Jones films, I rewatched Secret of the Incas, and
Okay.
yeah, it seems like Spielberg and Lucas were very inspired by that film, but they made a even better film in response to it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, taking inspiration. Yeah, definitely excited to get back into Indiana Jones. I'm probably going to try to get through rewatch on those here over the next kind of month as we're getting ready for Dial of Destiny to come out. And yeah, that's impressive that you made it through all of the Indiana or the all of the James Bond films. So that is hats off to you getting through all those because you've done it pretty quick, I would think. So
Yeah, so I don't know, James Bond, the 007 series, like it's just like a fun series to get into. Like you get to kind of see like how entertainment has changed, how the world has changed over 60 years, 60 plus years, you know?
well, let me ask you this, Cassia, because I know that that you still got Spectre and No Time to Die to get through, and I think you've probably seen at least No Time to Die. But what about going back like to the beginning? Are there any like assumptions you had about James Bond that were turned on their head, or were there things that were surprised you that you liked about James Bond, or what are your takeaways? I guess now that you've been back through these.
I I'd always heard about Sean Connery, but I've never really seen all of his films except for like Diamonds Are Forever, and I think like in that film like it's the last James Bond film he did, and he was kind of just there for the paycheck. But to kind of see some of his earlier films where uh the 007, like formula was being created, I'm like, oh, Sean Connery, he looks, like okay, because we don't want to objectify anyone. But all of the Bonds, I think, have their different strengths and weaknesses, and all of them have like one really good standout film. For me, like Sean Connery's film, his best film is From Russia with Love, uh, which is a weird, title to say in 2023. But I mean, George Lazenby only had On His Majesty's Secret Service, but I think that film, like when it came out, people were like, "Oh, it's not Sean Connery," and Lazenby's a bit wooden, but I think it's a good film. Like the some of its parts are excellent. And I thought like The Spy Who Loved Me, was excellent. From Roger Moore, I think it was his best, and I love The Living Daylights. Like I would love a James Bond sock from the London Sock Exchange,
Ooh.
uh, that had the cello snow chase, on it.
Oh,
And
there you go.
then Pierce Brosnan's Goldeneye. I thought it was excellent. Kind of like post Cold War. Like I think they brought Bond into the new age pretty well. And Daniel Craig, I would say his best film is probably Casino Royale. Uh, I thought they all brought excellent things to, the franchise.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. I'm very excited, like I said, that you got to go back and get through all those, and very impressive in the time you got through all of them. So very cool, very cool.
Thanks. All right. Shall we dive back into the Phantom Menace and enter Act Two?
That's right. Yeah, let's get into Act Two. Let's the pod racer has pulled across the finish line, and let's get back to it.
Okay, so Anakin has won the pod race. The ship will now be able to be repaired with the proper Nubian parts, and Anakin is free. But the downside is Shimmy wasn't able to be freed, and he's gonna have to leave behind his mother.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Qui-Gon said that he wasn't here to free the slaves, but yeah, kind of learning about who Anakin could potentially be and who he, saw in Anakin, I guess. Um, and drove and motivated Qui-Gon to get Anakin free, and tells him and his mother that he's going to be going with them back to Coruscant to begin his Jedi training.
Yeah,
Which is actually what I have there for my step 7, the approach to the inmost cave. But I don't know, did we cover your step 6 yet, Cassia?
so my step 6 for test allies and enemies is Coruscant, because we kind of see Padme go through some political tests with some mentoring from Palpatine, quote unquote
Mm-hmm.
mentoring. And then we see Anakin being tested by the Jedi Council, and we kind of see like Obi-Wan like maybe like kind of like saying like, why can't you just do things like the council does, Qui-Gon? Like I do feel ready like to kind of take the step into knighthood, but you kind of just see the different heroes kind of grapple with things. Um, you kind of see Anakin. He's free, but what is he there to do? Like if he's not going to be a Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of like get introduced to more characters, and I mean, it's up to the viewer to decide who allies and enemies are. Like, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the viewer might know like Palpatine ends up becoming Emperor Palpatine, but the characters don't know that yet. So I kind of just like for step 6 put Coruscant.
Okay. Oh, okay. So wow. So you jumped well ahead of me there, because I obviously, as I mentioned, had kind of the actual pod race as being step 6. So that's interesting. That's interesting that you propelled it that far forward then. So let's talk about the approach to the innermost cave then. Here is step 7. I'll go ahead and lead this one off because mine is still way back on Tatooine. So approach to the innermost cave. The hero nears the center of the story and the special world. Like I said, I kind of identified Tatooine as the special world that Qui-Gon is on. So I think that his approach to the innermost cave is when he's telling Anakin that he's been freed, thus separating him from his mother. So I really kind of view kind of the inmost cave as kind of this Skywalker home, and more importantly, then kind of the inner feelings of Anakin. Really kind of diving into the emotional quandary that Anakin's going to be having to deal with for the remainder of the saga, basically at that. But I viewed kind of that point of telling Anakin that he was going to be taking him away from his mother as the approach to the Emos cave.
Wow, that's so interesting. But I respect it, And that's the fun thing about like heroes' journeys. Like we all kind of view things with our own eyes and our own backgrounds and leanings. So like we can everyone can kind of see themselves in the same movie and like kind of come to different conclusions. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I placed a bulk of mine there because I actually have kind of the section on Coruscant coming far later, and my storytelling here. So as you mentioned, everyone kind of gets off of or we get the ship fixed, right, and everyone's about ready to leave Tatooine, but not before we encounter another enemy by the name of Darth Maul, who we've been teased with a couple of times, leading up to this section, but kind of comes out of nowhere on his jazzy little Sith motorcycle and comes in, and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul have their first kind of encounter there, which is what I saw as my ordeal. Step 8, the hero faces the greatest challenge yet and experiences death and rebirth. So kind of that first face off with Darth Maul, and then narrowly escaping, kind of jumping up onto that ship platform and falling down to his back before is able to kind of set up and introduce Anakin to Obi-Wan. So I saw kind of that fight as the ordeal, and then him going kind of in that lay down posture as his death, and then sitting back up to introduce kind of his prize of this section, being Anakin, to introduce him to Obi-Wan, who would go on to be his master, through the story as the ordeal.
Huh. maybe I should like slow my horses down. But yeah, like there are some interesting things happening in the prequel trilogy, and I think it like took me reading The Hero with a Thousand Faces to fully, kind of understand where Lucas was coming from. And like you kind of see like in The Hero with a Thousand Faces, like Joseph Campbell when he was writing it, it was like 49. And like in that time, like Freud was really seen and inspired a lot of like the culture. But like so like you saw a lot of things through a Freudian lens at that time, like even like Flannery O'Connor's fiction, like kind of like mentions like Freudian thought, But one of the things that is kind of brought up, not that like I believe, in like all of Freud's teachings and stuff, but sometimes it does appear in fiction and it is interesting. It's not a one for one for real life, but like the Campbellian influence I saw in the Phantom Menace is kind of like inspired by the Freudian stuff. Like when Anakin is separated from his mom, he kind of imprints on Padme, who's like an older female than he is. And I mean, we kind of see that dynamic continue uh, in Attack of the Clones. And I guess why you could maybe say like it's romantic, maybe it's not healthy,
Hmm.
but that's kind of something interesting that like reading the hero's journey, uh or not the hero's journey, the hero with a thousand faces, like I was like, oh, okay. Like I can see where Lucas was kind of going with Anakin a little bit better.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It makes all of those kind of decisions make more sense if you're looking at it through the lens of something like the hero with a thousand faces to see why he decided to kind of send him down this path that we're accompanying him on throughout the film to see how the fall eventually is going to happen uh through the story, which on one hand is inevitable, obviously, because we know where Anakin slash Darth Vader ends up. So really, it's a journey of getting him to that point and a journey of figuring it out what pushed him to that point.
Yeah. It is interesting to see like it's kind of what the Jedi demand of Anakin. I think that kind of puts him into the negative headspace he kind of reaches in Attack of the Clones. Like I'm not gonna like say the Jedi were 100% at fault, but like kind of separating Anakin, who is like a loving kid, from his loving mother when he's like a young kid, 9,
Hmm.
that's not going to be good for him. And then kind of telling him like about the Jedi prophecy, but kind of not believing in him. It's gonna like kind of just make him feel like he has a chip on his shoulder, and like have something to prove and like kind of be arrogant, kind of a la, like some of the characters, like maybe like Achilles, from
Hmm.
the Iliad. But can you tell I'm really excited to talk about Attack of the Clones?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, for sure. And that'll be a fun one to dissect
Yeah.
too, because there's a lot of kind of overlapping story between the characters. But so you'd said that getting to Coruscant was your test allies and enemies then. So what is the innermost cave? What do you see as representative of that then, Cassia, or step 7?
My step 7, approach to the innermost cave is kind of like the Battle of Naboo. Um, because like they have to go back to where they kind of like the story started, like you see like Amidala is like allying with Gungans. There's like a everywhere you can think of there's a battle,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the good guys are kind of making their stand like with the Gungans, the Nubians in Theed, and in the against the droids, like kind of in the fields, So that's what I kind of saw as approach to the innermost cave.
Okay. Yeah, so okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to have that final battle, which is, kind of that big last third of the film. I actually don't even have the battle for Naboo as one of my steps other than the Darth Maul Qui-Gon fight at the end of the film, but we're gonna have to wait to get into that with me for sure. So as I'd mentioned, I saw the approach was talking to Anakin and his mother, the separation there, and then the ordeal being that face off with Darth Maul as everyone's getting ready to leave. Planets and head back to Coruscant. I guess we'll stick with you here to allow me some time to catch up. Then, what about the ordeal? If your approach to the innermost cave is the battle for Naboo, where does that leave your ordeal then?
So when the Battle of Naboo gets more complicated, I saw eight as the ordeal. The Duel of Fates Maul shows up, and that kind of separates Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan from the group. And I just love the song Duel of the Fates. Like when I was writing my notes, I just put John Williams with lots of hearts around it. Like that's what I feel about it. And then you see the Nubian fighters in space trying to fight against the Trade Federation, but there's like some shields. So they're
Mhm.
not really able to make much of an impact. And then you kind of see like the Gungans fighting the droids, but it's not going well for them. So that's where I saw the ordeal.
Okay, okay. Um, yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and I'm still then with the ordeal, then you get to step number nine, which is the reward for going through the ordeal, more or less. The reward, the hero experiences the consequences of surviving death. So, as I mentioned, my ordeal was that initial confrontation with Darth Maul. So I think that the reward for Qui-Gon here for surviving the ordeal is it's kind of a threefold here. So he gets to introduce Anakin to Obi-Wan, which we know. Which we know as the viewers is going to be very, very important as he's going to be the one being his master. So, but I thought that was one of the threefold sections there. We learn, or Qui-Gon learns, that there is a Sith out there, or someone is at least trained kind of in the arts of being a Sith. So he gets the knowledge. That's one of the rewards, and then kind of the ultimate reward here for surviving that is he's able to take Anakin back to Coruscant and present Anakin to the Council as at least in Qui-Gon's eyes anyway, as the chosen one.
It's just cool. The first time we're doing kind of like a hero's journey, just us, like kind of just seeing like where we kind of intersect, where we differ.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can argue about it, like, and I'll be like, R2's stupid, and like get some clickbait stuff going on or something. But just kidding. I would
That's
never
right.
do that. R2
Yeah,
is
don't.
beloved.
That's right.
Um,
That's that is a bridge too far for sure.
yeah. One thing like I was kind of hit by like seeing Coruscant, because this is like the first time Coruscant is seen in a Star Wars movie, um, besides like the besides like the little snippet you can see in like the updated Return of the Jedi fanfare at the end. I don't know if you've ever seen Metropolis, but like when I saw Metropolis, I'm like, oh, I understand what they were trying to make Coruscant look like now.
Yeah, with the ships kind of in single file going through the air. Yeah, absolutely. The entire planet is one big city, as we learned. And yeah, Coruscant, it looks really cool. As a place we kind of heard about and talked about and other legend stuff. So to see it come to life, and then yeah, it looks glorious. I mean, as they're coming in, landing, and kind of the digital effects of that, and there's that beautiful shot of was it Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan going out onto that balcony while Anakin
With the
is
sunset.
there
Yeah.
in front of the council chamber and stuff like that. So yeah, just absolutely staggering visuals, and then to see kind of all of those pods that they're in the Senate chambers and stuff like that. So yeah, it just had this huge kind of scale about it. And even though we end up seeing more of it, obviously, in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But even here, kind of in this first one, you get a really good sense of kind of the scope and the busyness, I guess, of the city at least.
Maybe the movie does slow down a bit on Coruscant, but I think it is kind of necessary to see like Anakin rejected by the Jedi Council, and you kind of see like why we can't just have like a diplomatic solution,
Hmm.
to the situation on Naboo. Um, I think like where the prequels shine is when Ian McDiarmid is the center of the political story. And we see that a little bit more in Attack of the Clones and in Revenge of the Sith. Like, I think like Ian McDiarmid is the best part of the prequel's political story, and I think the
Hmm.
actor they had for Valorum maybe just didn't quite understand what they were going for. But like, I just think like Ian McDiarmid like kind of hits the notes the best in the political story.
Yeah, absolutely. The political section is really great, and we get to see a lot of really fun stuff with Padme in this section as well. Kind of learning about her own political ideals and the way she feels about her constituents back on Naboo and stuff. You could almost do a hero's journey analysis of Padme as the hero
Mhm.
of the Phantom Menace. That wouldn't be that far out of the realm of possibility, I don't think, and especially we're seeing a lot of her journey play out in this section as we're seeing kind of the decisions she's making, and then ultimately, going back to Naboo and unifying these two kind of races of people on the planet and things like that. So,
Yeah, it is interesting. I just want to say this, like, I'd forgotten they made Yoda for the Phantom Menace CGI. Like, that was kind of a later addition they did.
that's
So,
right. I do miss Puppet Yoda. Puppet Yoda was pretty good, but
yeah. And also, I just wanted to further alienate some of our listeners and say, like, if midichlorians were mentioned in A New Hope, they'd be classic and beloved, but because they're mentioned here, they're maligned and discarded. But we did hear about M count, I think, in the Mandoverse shows, so
oh yeah, that's right.
all is not lost. So,
All is not lost. Midichlorians are still alive and well and kicking. Yeah, and midichlorians, it's it's up for debate. I think that they're fine. There are a lot of ways to explain a thing when you don't necessarily have all the facts about a thing. So everything is true from a certain point of view, as
mhm.
Obi-Wan teaches us. And maybe Obi-Wan and Yoda didn't want to talk about midichlorians anymore because the last time they did, that kid grew up to be Darth Vader. So maybe just sweep those midichlorians under the rug. We don't need to tell Luke everything. You know,
Yeah.
maybe it would have been over Luke's head. Maybe if Leia had been there on Dagobah, they probably would have told her because she probably would have
She would have
understood better.
understood, but I think like the metachlorians, it's kind of like maybe talking like IQ tests, like you can measure those, like someone's like intelligence. I don't even know what IQ stands for, so like you can just lower my IQ, I guess. But
Wow, 10 points deducted.
yeah. Um, so it's like maybe looking at IQ, it's like you can test those things, but is the test fully accurate and taking into consideration like someone's work ethic, like where they come from, like all that, like and the Jedi in the prequels are kind of like we said, like they're good, but they're kind of misguided, So like maybe having the emphasis on like standardized testing, rather than thinking about the spiritual truths, of the force, the
Right.
living force. Like that's kind of what got them into the problem, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah. So I mentioned my reward was basically like I said, Anakin meeting Obi-Wan. We've learned of the Sith presence and is able to present Anakin to the Council. Then, so what is your reward then, Cassia? You said the ordeal was kind of this um, battle for Naboo, and the ordeal is that first face off or the kind of the duel of the fates. What's the reward then?
For me, the reward is the Trade Federation control ship is destroyed when Anakin shoots it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can see that as being a reward for the story for sure. I don't know that I see that as particularly being a reward for Qui-Gon if he's meant to be the hero of the story. But I could definitely see how that would be a reward um for the Phantom Menace for the film and our group of heroes as a whole, definitely.
Yeah, it kind of changes the fates of Padme leading her party to the Theed Palace, and we see things get better for Jar Jar when the droids kind of shut down.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that is the end of Act Two. Do you know what that means?
Well, if we're sticking true to this guideline, it means that it is time to put down my coffee cup and to pick up a cocktail glass and a mocktail glass because I think it's time for a beverage, Cassia.
Yeah. So we'll take a quick break and we'll surprise each other because we didn't compare notes on our cocktails and mocktails, but we will be sure to describe them in detail so listeners at home can make whatever they choose.
That's right. We'll be right back.
Okay, are you there?
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Should we start with the mocktail or the cocktail?
We can start with the mocktail. Sure.
Okay, so if it sounds like I'm out of breath, it's because I ran down the stairs because I was so excited. I didn't spill anything, so
Well, that's good.
that's a good thing, you know? So I hope this sentence isn't too jarring, but today I made the jar jar and I'm drinking it from a
Uh,
jar. So in a way, you could say I have a jar jar jar, you know?
a jar cubed.
Yeah, not to be confused with Din Djarin,
Mm.
whose mask kind of looks like a, or I guess it's more of a helmet, like looks like a jar head. But this is a mocktail. I'm not quite up to your level. I have improved from, my days as a kid when I would be like, oh, what about chocolate milk with Pepsi? Is that good? And spoiler
Sure.
alert, it's not. It's disgusting.
It's
Um,
amazing.
yeah. So, for the Jar Jar, I wanted to just kind of rewatching this. I'm like, Jar Jar deserves the world. So I decided to make something that kind of reminded me of Jar Jar. So
Okay.
I have like one half Mongo mango juice, which is, I think, Langer's brand. And I ended up choosing that because I watched the 1980 Flash Gordon movie, and they have a planet named Mongo in that. And Flash Gordon is one of the stories that influenced Star Wars. So I was like, ooh, kind
Hmm.
of like at the beginning, we can like kind of harken back to that Flash Gordon lineage. So Mongo mango, so it's half Mongo mango juice and half grapefruit juice, also from Langer's, topped with a nice Rose's sweetened lime juice. And I
Okay.
decided to just commit and be like, I'm drinking this out of a jar because it's summer, So, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I like that. I like the mango and then I like you get the a little bit of kind of that bitter citrus from the grapefruit juice and some lime. Yeah, that sounds lovely. It sounds like it would be a really good in the summertime. You could probably turn that into like a soda if you wanted to put in some, club soda, sparkling water, something like that too. To give it a little bit of effervescence. But yeah, I like the jar in a jar.
What about you?
All right, so I am mixing up a cocktail here for our beverage break, and I am making a Qui-Gon gin and tonic because it's a really fun play on words. And this one is extra special because it's going to be green, just like Qui-Gon's lightsaber, which is about to be pretty important for my part of the story here. So we're just mixing up a regular gin and tonic. It's 1.5 ounces of gin, 3 ounces of tonic water, roughly. But we're going to add 3/4 of an ounce of Midori, which is a Japanese melon liqueur. It's made from like honeydew melon and some other Japanese fruits there. It's really very, very lovely. It's very light in flavor, but it is real, real green. So it's going to make your cocktail a nice kind of bright green color in the glass. And then we're going to garnish that with, you can use Maileron fruits if you want, or if you don't have that, a nice slice of lemon, and you're going to be good to go. But a Qui-Gon gin and tonic. I almost did a Darth Maul cocktail, but then I was like, if Qui-Gon is the hero of this movie, he needs his own cocktail. Qui-Gon gin and tonic.
Oh, that's a clever pun, and I'll be sure to post my Jar Jar Jar, on our Discord and to our friends at the Hero's Journey podcast. And I'm sure you'll post your Qui-Gon gin and tonic. But
Hmm.
yeah, so now that we're all bevied up, I guess we begin Act 3.
That's right. Yeah, let's get back into the Phantom Menace. We'll get this party wrapped up and begin Act 3. And Act 3 begins with the road back. So number 10, the road back. The hero returns to the ordinary world or continues to an ultimate destination. So I'm still well behind you here in the story, Cassie. I'd mentioned my reward was, basically presenting Anakin to the council. So my road back for Qui-Gon is his road back to the ordinary world, and I viewed his ordinary world as, really helping out, doing his Jedi stuff. So I think returning to Naboo to learn the identity of the Sith is the road back for Qui-Gon Jinn. But you're way ahead of me. So what are you viewing as the road back?
So I kind of saw the road back as Qui-Gon's death, you know, and because he's the hero of the Phantom Menace, but his his role as a corporeal being of flesh and blood, ends in the Duel of the Fates when he dies. And then we kind of see Obi-Wan kind of struggle as he steps up to try to defeat Maul. And I kind of saw the road back as Maul dying. I think I might be a little bit too
Mm.
far ahead, but what is your road back?
So I think that the road back, is just returning to Naboo with Queen Amidala and contingency, and they get sent back, specifically from the Jedi Council to return to Naboo and to learn the identity of this alleged Sith that we've had this run in. So I think that the road back for Qui-Gon is going back to, like I said, what I saw his ordinary world and going back to Naboo there.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that
And then like for my resurrection, step 11, I saw it as Anakin is made a Jedi. Yoda is saying like we're not feeling good about this, but it was Qui-Gon's dying wish and he's dead. So we are making Anakin a Jedi and you're gonna train
Anakin.
him. So have fun with that.
Anakin's a Jedi now. Your master's dead. Good luck with that. Spoiler: it's not going to go great for any of us, for sure. For my resurrection, the hero experiences a final moment of death and rebirth, so they are pure when they re-enter the ordinary world. So, for my resurrection, I have here is when Qui-Gon you know is defeated by Darth Maul, but is reborn again by joining in with into the Force as Force spirit, Force ghost ness. So that is kind of his rebirth, and he's able to move on. Knowing that Anakin is going to be trained, and with the faith that he is the chosen one. So that's kind of what I saw as the resurrection, kind of that final moment of his actual like physical death, and then rebirth, not in a sense of he's able to carry on with his story, but he's able to move on to that final kind of end goal for the Jedi, which is becoming one with the Force.
Yeah. So in a way, like when a Jedi dies, like they're kind of able to transcend death. Qui-Gon, to an extent, he didn't complete his, I guess, Jedi Ghost Force training DLC, but like through
That's
him,
right.
Yoda and Obi-Wan get to as well. And like eventually, somehow, like we see, Qui-Gon spoilers, in Kenobi, but yeah, so like even though he's defeated on one plane, like he does influence. We feel his presence, in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of what I saw as the rebirth. Like I said, so he's kind of reborn as being one with the Force, with the ultimate knowledge then that Anakin would go on to be trained, because he basically has that conversation with Obi-Wan right at the end of the Duel of the Fates here. Obi-Wan is kind of holding him there, and Qui-Gon makes him promise that he'll teach the boy, and that's exactly what happens. So kind of at that point, then I think that kind of mission is accomplished, which leads right into then my return with the elixir, which is the final step here. The hero returns with something to improve the ordinary world. So basically, for Qui-Gon here as the hero of my story, his elixir is the knowledge of knowing that Anakin will be trained as a Jedi. And he's able to kind of move on and leave in that kind of mentor role that we've seen time and time again over in the Star Wars films. So Obi-Wan leaves Luke, Yoda leaves Luke, Luke leaves Rey, and it all started here in the Phantom Menace with Qui-Gon leaving Anakin and to his next mentor, next tutelage sort of thing. So I view the elixir as kind of the knowledge of Anakin is going to be trained in the Jedi ways.
Yeah, mine is very similar to yours. Return with the Elixir, step 12. I saw it as Naboo is free, Anakin is a Jedi, and Obi-Wan is a knight. And there's a happy parade. It kind of seems a little bit, like the end of A New Hope. But if you really think about it, like, who do you think is the person that's like most happy at the end of the Phantom Menace?
Well, probably Chancellor Palpatine because they're playing his theme at the march. So,
Yeah.
if anyone didn't know that, I think it's pretty common knowledge within the Star Wars world. But kind of that march is the Imperial March. It's just sped up and tuned up, but it's the same as the Emperor's uh theme there. So yeah, I think that ultimately he's happy, but everyone, I mean, looks very happy. Padme is smiling, the Gungans are smiling, they have come to peace. So I think to finish off our first section, other than other than our hero Qui-Gon, and maybe he's happy too, looking down his little force orb or whatever he was still at that point. But yeah, it's a pretty happy ending with a darker backbone to it for sure. But what do you think? Who do you think is the happiest here?
Yeah, for sure. Palpatine, he's now Chancellor. Someone has kind of like notified him of like this young boy is like incredible force potential, and he's going to be trained on Coruscant, so he can kind of keep an eye on him. And uh, Obi-Wan is made a knight, but he's kind of not like making the choice out of his own, I guess, volition or will. He's kind of doing it to fulfill something that was going to be Qui-Gon's duty,
Hmm.
And the Jedi are kind of like, oh, we're a little bit hesitant about this, and uh, Anakin's been separated from his mother, like we said, and yeah, like you're kind of just uneasy about it. You're like, Padme's literally not mentioned that much what's going to happen to her, so and you kind of know like things aren't going to go well in the prequel trilogy. It's going to be more of a tragedy, but it'll be interesting to see how we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is where our story ends here is peace on Naboo, and things are going, but it's about to be uh going a little downhill for our heroes when we get into episode 2, Attack of the Clones. But that was the Phantom Menace. Cassio, we made it all the way through. We went through our hero's journey steps. I think it's a lot of fun. This is kind of a topic that we breach, on the semi-regular here on the podcast, because it's a topic that is pretty interesting to both of us. And one of the neat things about this, and obviously we just learned, you and I talking about this, is the hero's journey is really kind of up to interpretation. So
Yeah.
obviously, if we would ask, if George Lucas ever wanted to come on the podcast, we'd love to have him. We could get his own hero's journey analysis of the Phantom Menace. But certainly the way he wrote it and structured it is different than the way you saw it, the way that I saw it, and people would see it and interpret it. So that's kind of one of the neat things about storytelling. But it's all those basic kind of stepping stones and structure of what storytelling is and has been, and will always be, pretty much.
Yeah, like sometimes maybe I can get a little bit too evangelizing y. That's a word
Mm-hmm,
about the
mm-hmm.
hero's journey, and be like, no, it has to be this step, this step, this step. this archetype here, boom, boom, boom. But I think that's what's interesting is like it's more of a pattern, and sometimes it's interesting when you kind of tweak the rules, play with the rules, or break the rules. That's why people want to be surprised. Um, and I was re-listening to our episode with Chris Vogler, and that's what makes stories fun is kind of like playing with it because they're meant to be fun. And I don't know, I just grew up with the prequels and I love them, and hopefully, like, maybe even if you're not a fan, like, maybe you can kind of see them from a different point of view, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back if you haven't watched it in a long time. It's definitely worth going back and rewatching. It's not a Star Wars film that I've watched very recently. I try to get through them all, at least a time or two a year. I'll just put something on, but I haven't went all the way back to the Phantom Menace for quite a while. So it was really fun getting back into it. It was a movie that came out and basically was it was very joyous for me. I was born and grew up with the original trilogy, but I was born a little bit later there, so I was kind of in that in that dead zone of Star Wars time where you had the books and video games and things, but no films. So the Phantom Menace was my first real Star Wars film of one that I could call my own to go to the movie theater and see, which I did 7 times when it was out. When I was in high school, and then
Wow.
saw it in 3D and things. So yeah, so it was perfect timing for me. I had I had a little bit of pocket money. I had a car. I could take myself to the theater, and yeah, it took over the world and permeated everything in a lot of different ways. So yeah, go back and give it a watch and let us know what you think about your own hero's journey, or who you think the hero is, or if we should have been talking about R2 as the hero for the whole thing, because we should have. We missed the boat there for sure.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen the documentary, The Prequel Strike Back, I highly recommend it. Do you highly recommend it?
I do highly recommend it. Absolutely, it's a really good watch, and makes a really good case for why you should give the prequels a chance for sure.
Yeah. And hopefully you guys enjoyed our first, plagiarized episode of the Hero's Journey podcast. And I'm so excited to talk about Attack of the Clones. Like, I have my mocktail already planned for that. So it's going to be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, special shout out to the Hero's Journey podcast. We really love them and the podcast and the work that we do. And we were honored to have them on our show. So definitely go back and listen to that and give their podcast a listen. They have this down to a science. They could have made it through way better than us, but it wouldn't have been us doing it. So I don't know. I guess 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But that's the Phantom Menace. So join us next time, and we'll be going through the hero's journey of Attack of the Clones.
Yeah. And may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.